This is the recipe demo, and what I'd like for us to do first is go to My PVCC on the pvcc.edu homepage, and once we open that, I'd like for us to open Canvas. Then I'd like for us to open our Typography 1 class. Once you're to Typography 1, I want us to go to Week 4, Page Layout and InDesign, and we're going to go to Day 8, and we're going to open our InDesign recipe demo. Once we open that, I'd like for us to right-click on the CC Demo 20, and we're going to save link as to our desktop. It should download a zip file. Let's minimize our Chrome window. So I'd like for us to double-click on our CC Demo 20, and let's double-click on our Cupcake Demo folder here. Let's look at what's in the folder. We can see an illustration. We can see our Cupcakeys INDD file, which is our working file. We have our Cupcakeys Fin file, which is our final InDesign document. And we have our Cupcakeys Fin PDF. And this is what our document will look like when we're finished. And you can see we're inspecting typographic rule, hierarchy of type, placement on the grid of imagery, and we're looking at paragraph styles, character styles. And so this is what we're doing today. I also have placed in this folder a recipe grid template, very similar to the templates I had for your thumbnails, and this will be our working grid that we'll be using for this project. Now you can make your own grid, but I have the original grid here that you can use. All right, so let's X out of that. And I'd like first to go to InDesign, and I'm going to hit our Command Option Control Shift if you're on a Mac, and hit Open. And if you're on a PC, I want you to hit Control Alt Shift, and we're going to hit Yes, and we are going to delete our InDesign preferences. And once we have InDesign open, I'd like for us to go to File, Open, or Command O or Control O, and we're going to open our working Cupcakeys INDD file. Let's hit Open. Next, I'd like for us to go to Open again, or Control O, and let's open our Cupcakeys Fin file so we can see what we're going to be making in this document. And this is what our final should look like, something like this. All right, so let's go to our working document, Cupcakeys INDD. You can always refer to the final file if you are having problems with this. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to go grab our box tool. We're going to add some typographic rule here, and this is going to be where we place our ice cream text. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to drag out a box, and I'm going to try to snap to the edge of this. And we're going to go 2 boxes in from the gutter or the margin. And just make sure we're going to zoom in by hitting Command+. And we can use our arrow keys to make sure that it is good and locked into place. Once it's in place and it's properly set, what I'd like for us to do is to go add color to it. Now before we go any further, I'd like for us to go to our typography workspace, and let's add some color. Now we can go to the swatches panel off to the right side, and I've already made some colors down here at the bottom. You can see new color 20%. But I want to generate that. So what we're going to do first is we're going to go to our cyan, and I'm going to take the line off of it by hitting None. So if I go to the top, I can go hit None. And then once I'm on that cyan right there, what I can do is I can add it to my swatches. And I'm going to double click on it. I'm going to make this down to 20%. And I can preview it, and that should give us our blue color. And I hit OK. So we have our blue color set. Now, if we zoom out, and I can hit Command 0 to kind of see where we are, or Command Option 0 to see both of our pages. And I want to add a little bit more of that color bar onto the right side of the page. So I'm going to zoom out a little bit, and I'm going to grab my box tool again, and I'm going to add some more typographic rule to the edges. And again, I want it to snap into place. Make sure it snaps. And we are going to use that same color. And I can go to my swatches menu, scroll down to the bottom, use the same color, and we're going to have our fill at none. Should fill that space pretty good, but just make sure that we're good and locked in to our grid. So once we're done with that, I want us to go to page 1. Now if you forgot about this, our page numbering is down here at the bottom, and I can go to page 1. And what we're going to do is we're going to add ice cream to the top here. And before we move any further, I'd like for us to continue coloring the rest of this document. I'm going to go to the bottom here. I'm going to color this blue panel as well. And make sure you're on your fill here. And we are going to fill it with that blue color. And we are also going to make our stroke none. So there we go. We have some of our decorative elements added to our document. And the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to add text. But before we move any further, I'd like for us to go to our layers panel, and we're going to go to a new layer to add our text. So we have all of our rectangles and all of those things already set. We're going to lock that layer, and we're going to start building type on layer 2. Now if you don't have a layer 2, you can always add a new layer, but I don't need this layer, so I'm going to throw it into the garbage. But yeah, we'll be on layer 2. Just make sure you're selected on it. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to drag out a text box. I'm going to grab my type tool, and I'm going to click right here in this corner here, and I'm going to drag out all the way to the end of this box. Now, looks a little big. I'm going to type in ice cream, and I'm going to highlight it, and I'm going to change it to Brandon Grotesque. And I'm going to change it to Brandon Grotesque Black. Now if you don't have Brandon Grotesque, you can always go to Adobe Fonts and activate it. And then once we're there, I'd like for us to make it 91 points. And notice how the typeface fills up the grid right there. What we can do after that is we can grab our black arrow tool and we can hit Command-Option-C, and it will conform our text box to the size of the text. We can see it really fitting snugly in that grid format. Now, what I want to do is I want to highlight the text and make sure that it's white. So if we go to our swatches here, make sure that it is paper. Next, what I'd like for us to do is select our box with our black arrow tool. And I want us to shift the box down close to the edge, so it just kisses that edge a little bit. And that should make it so that we don't see the edge of that blue. Once I have ice cream on here, what I'd like for us to do is go over to layers, and we're going to go to our drop down menu right here. I'm going to lock ice cream. Notice that ice cream goes below the typographic rule. Next thing I'd like for us to do is drag out a text box from the top corner here all the way past the A. Now notice that the text box at the top on ice cream overlaps the typographic rule in the grid. If I didn't lock ice cream, when I made this text box below, it wouldn't have allowed me to make it. It would keep grabbing ice cream. So it's really important that we stay in our grid, and this is a decorative element that I allowed this text box to go below. So let's type in bonbon, cupcakes. Next thing I'd like for us to do is to make it 35 points. After we're done with that, what we can do is we can type in Brandon Grotesque. Now I'm going to make it regular. Once we're done with that, I'd like for us to change the color. I want to make it a blue color. Let's go to our swatches. Now, I've made a swatch here, and I want us to use this swatch. It's a spot color. Now, once we've added that text, I'd like for us to select it, and I want us to add a character style. Now, what we can do is we can add a character style, and we can look at the basic character format. Notice that it is Brandon Grotesque. It is the character color that we've chosen, and then I can title it Subhead. hit OK. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to baseline shift this text so that it's situated more comfortably in this grid. And I'm going to hit -6. And that should be OK. So that's more of what I want here. Next thing I'd like for us to do is to add our illustration, and we can hit Command D or Control D, or we can go to File Place. And I'm going to hit my Cupcake PDF. Now before we place it, what I'd like for us to do is zoom out and make sure that we're aligning it to the grid. And I want this cupcake to be the width of our Bon Bon Cupcakes text. So I'm going to grab that box, I'm going to click and drag out and make it go to the edge of Bon Bon Cupcakes. So it goes right there. That looks pretty good. So let's go to our next page and start working on our character styles. Let's grab our type tool and let's go up to our ingredients here. The first thing I'd like for us to do on our ingredients is change the type. Now, I'd like for it to be all in capitals. So the first thing that we're going to do is go to type up at the top, and we're going to go to change case and make it all uppercase. Once I've done that, I'd like for us to make a character style. Instead of making it the way we did last time, I want to make it in our character styles. So let's go to add character style. I'm going to double click on it, and I want it based on none, and I'm going to title this header. And let's go to our basic character format. Just make sure that it is Brandon Grotesque. We are going to make it black. And the point size I'd like it to be is 24 points. And the color, I want it to be the same as the Bon Bon Cupcakes, which is this new swatch color we added. So that is our ingredients. And the next thing I'd like for us to do is to add some leading. So what we're going to do here is I'd like for us to change this to just regular Brandon Grotesque. Regular. And we are going to make it 10 point. And let's make the points, or let's make the leading here around 26. That looks good. And let's change our character size here, and let's make them about 20 points, and we can just type in here 20. And I'd like to make it black, and we're going to do the same thing with our 1 here. We're going to make it 20 points, and we're going to make it black. All right. And I forgot to add my colon here, so I'm going to add my colon there. Next thing we want to do is we want to move this text box down a little bit. And when we do that, we can just hit, if we're on our type tool, we can hit Command or Control, and we can move that down. And I just want to move it 1 box. And that should be about right. So next thing that we're going to do is we're going to drag out a text box right here, and we're going to type in it directions. Now, make sure it snaps so it's in the right position. We're going to hit directions, all in caps. And we're going to select it all. We're going to make it a header over here in the character styles. All right. So next thing we want to do is we want to grab our type, and let's hit Command A if you're on a Mac, or Control A if you're on a PC. And you can always go up to Edit here, and you can just get Select All if you want to select all the type. And so what we're going to do next is we're going to go to our paragraph styles. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make a new paragraph style. I'm going to double click on it, and I'm going to title it Body Text, or you can title it Column Text, whatever you'd like to call it. And what we're going to do is go to Basic Character Formats. We're going to make it Brandon Grotesque, and we are going to make it regular, and we're going to make it 10 point. And let's go down to our spacing and indents, and we are going to make it left justified. And we can always preview this so you can see what it's looking like. And we can go down to our color next. And we can adjust all the things, like we can turn off hyphenation, we can adjust the justification. But for our purposes right now, I just want to add some color. And I've already added some color to this, but if we want to add a new color, we can add a black 48. But I'm going to add a new one. So I'm going to hit black, and I'm going to hit tint at 50%, and I'm going to hit OK. And now I should have the color that I want. Now that will set our column text. Now, for example, if I wanted to set this to be our column text, notice that would make that gray as well. One thing I'm noticing about this paragraph here is that it's very tight together. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select all my text and I'm going to let it out a little bit. So I'm going to add some leading here up at the top, and we're going to make it 15 points. So once we're here, you can see that the paragraph style is looking much better spaced out. But there are a couple of little issues with the paragraph still. Notice that we have one extra word on this bottom here. We often call these orphans or widows. What we want to do is we want to get rid of this widow or orphan. And the way we do that is we usually go paragraph by paragraph or line by line. And what we do is we just change it by 5 points or 10 points. And in this case, I'm going to go a -5. So let's go to our drop down and go to -5, and it should get rid of it. Now, if it's only tracked out to -10 or 10 plus points, no, it's not very noticeable. And that's how we often correct individual lines that have tracking that are messed up. For example, let's fix this one, and maybe we're going to go the opposite way, and maybe we'll go to -5 on that one as well. And so therefore our paragraphs are kind of more fitting. So once our text is looking a little more ironed out, let's inspect our document and how it's appearing right now. So we can hit Shift W and look at it, and notice there's some empty white space right here. Notice there's some empty white space right here. I'm fine with the white space in this middle area right here because this is where our page tends to fold. And we're going to want that extra space so that when our book opens up, that we don't end up with too much text in this gutter. So let's escape here, and let's add some of these additional decorative areas. So I'm going to add, with my pen tool, a line here, and I'm just going to click outside, and I'm going to hold my Shift key down, and I'm going to change it to a dotted line up at the top. I'm going to add a spaced out dotted line, but I'm going to make it 7 points. And I'm also going to make it that blue color, that new color that we chose. And just make sure that it fits that gutter pretty well. And I'm just going to use my arrow keys and get it to move in. Now we can zoom out by hitting Command minus or Control minus. And what I'd like for us to do next is add typographic rule to this area right here. So what I'd like for us to do is to grab our pen tool again, or I can just hit P on my keyboard and click over here and hold my Shift key down. And again, I'm going to grab my dotted line at 7 points, and I'm going to change it to that blue at the very bottom. All right, and we can move it down, and let's start right there. And I can zoom in and just make sure it's just right. That looks pretty good to me. And this is looking closer to being done. The last thing that we're going to do here is we are going to adjust our typographic rule. Now I notice my typographic rule needs to come in a little bit right about here. I'm going to go to my layers and I'm going to unlock that bottom layer, and I'm going to click on that rectangle. I'm going to pull it in a little bit closer. Now I notice it's hugging the edge or not giving it a lot of breathing room right here on these text boxes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the text box at the top and hold my Shift key, and I'm going to select these two at the bottom. Once we have our 3 boxes selected, what I'd like for us to do is to go to our text frame options, and you can go to Object up at the top and hit text frame options there, or you can hit Command B. Next we want to add some inset spacing. So I'd like for us to unlock our inset spacing here, and we're only going to affect it from the left. So I'd like for us to inset some space right here. And I'm going to preview it, and I think I only want it to be to 0.6. So it just gives us a little bit of breathing room. And I hit OK. One thing I noticed since we've added this inset spacing to our text boxes over here, I noticed that I ended up with some more orphans and widows. So what we can do at the very end here is we can grab our type tool and we can increase from that 5 point on our type to adding it to be 10 point. And that should make it a little bit more balanced. And we'll go to 10 point. So this should look a little bit more clean and snug to our grid. Let's inspect this before we go to our next step. All right. So the last thing I'd like for us to do here is I'd like for us to add a bulleted list to our document. And I'd like for us to experiment with an alternate version to this ingredients menu at the top. So what we're going to do here is we're going to take this off the document and we're going to add our ingredients up from the right side up to the top. Make sure it snaps into place. And we're going to add our ingredients below. And what we're going to do is we're going to make sure that the ingredients is in all caps. So let's go to our type tool and go to change case to uppercase. And we're going to go to character styles and just make sure that it is a header. And if it's not fitting within that text box, just make sure that you grab your black arrow tool and drag that box out so that it gives it enough space. So let's grab our type tool again, and we're going to grab this type at the bottom and we're going to change it to our paragraph style, which should be right about here, column text. Except this time we're going to add a bulleted list to this. What we're going to do is we're going to select our type here. We're going to go to the paragraph tool or menu at the top, and we're going to go to this thing that says bulleted lists in the middle. Before you click it, I'd like for you to hit your Option key if you're on a Mac, or if you're on a PC, hit your Alt key, and we're going to click on it, and we should get a little pop-up menu. And what we're going to do here is we're going to go to our bullets on our drop-down window at the top, and you should see, if you don't have your preview clicked, we can click on it and make sure that we see this bulleted list started. Now, before we get going, I want us to think about different ways we can approach this. I'd like for us to add different styles. For example, I already have some glyphs up here. You can see those diamonds or these arrows, but let's add some new ones. Let's scroll down. Maybe we want to add a plus, triangle. Maybe we want to add a dot. Maybe we want to add a cross. And I hit OK. And those look pretty great. Now, really we could use something other than a font. I often think that wingdings or webdings are the best way to add special characters to a type, and especially for a bulleted list. So let's hit wingdings here, and I don't know if you guys have this, but I do. Just watch this if you don't have it. And I'm going to hit regular here at the bottom, and just make sure that you're inspecting the different choices you have here. Obviously, some of these we could never use for a bulleted list, but you might want to use a block, or you might want to add a diamond or a smaller diamond. But I'm really liking this star shape here. So let's add the star shape. I think it really fits the ice cream aesthetic. And we hit OK. So we have all these different options, and you can kind of click and check out how they appear. Again, I do kind of like this star thing happening here. And I don't exactly like the alignment right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change my indents here. And I'm fine with the left indent where this is right now, but I want to change our first line indent, and that's the distance between where the bullets are from the list. So let's increase that to 0.125, and then maybe we can decrease the tab position in a little bit to, let's say, to 0.375. And that looks pretty good. Before we finish this, I'd like for us to add a new character style. This will allow us to add a special character to the bullet, which means that we can change the point size. And I'd like this one to be 14, which is a little bit bigger. And I want us to change the character color to that blue that we've been using throughout. And I hit OK. And that's looking pretty good. And I go OK. Before we're done finishing this, I'd like for us to add our inset spacing. And I'd like for us to hold our Shift key and grab both the ingredients and the ingredients title. And we're going to go to Object here, and we're going to go to Text Frame Options, or you can hit Command B. And I'm going to add a little bit of inset spacing on the left side. And I hit OK. And this is what our final should look like with the bulleted list. All right. Well, that's the end of the demo, and good luck to everybody, and I look forward to seeing your results.